And so the three things that are listed up there, it says, let's agree to remain open-minded. Let's agree to be vulnerable and or brave. I know for some people, vulnerable can be something that detects weakness, but I want you to think of it as a strength. And so if not vulnerable, let's agree to be brave in this space. And lastly, let's all agree to push past our discomfort. And so, again, discussing mental health, especially in our communities, is usually something that is an uncomfortable thing to do. And so I think we're all existing in a space of discomfort by having the conversation, but I want us to agree to move past that. And then the last thing it says, we also encourage everyone to state their names and pronouns before addressing the larger group. So there'll be times when we're talking, but then there'll also be times where we'll want feedback from you all, or you to, give your response, because that's what makes it a conversation. So when you go to the mic, we would just encourage you again to say your names and your pronouns. So for example, my name is Brandi Chantalle. I go by she, her, etc. And this just will help us remain mindful of creating an environment that's inclusive of all gender expressions, in the same way we want to be mindful of the minority health experience. I want us to also be mindful of multiple gender orientations, sexual orientations, and things of that nature. Hey, girl.
All right, so what we're going to be reading is actually, this was actually given to us by the wonderful Shannon Wallace, who was kind enough to give us some words to open up the space. The city of Baltimore and the surrounding area rest on the indigenous Susquehannock land. By acknowledging the genocide that displaced these people from their ancestral homeland, a displacement that we, as a non-native Baltimore residents, benefit from, it grounds our community in the space of accountability and solidarity for all oppressed people. Acknowledging Native existence is resistance. All right, so with that being said, let's get started. I definitely want to preface this whole thing with just us getting some things out the way. For one, this conversation is going to be just that. It's going to be a conversation. It's going to be a dialogue. And we didn't want anybody to come into this space expecting to hear from two doctors or two mental health practitioners. That's not what we are. We are two people that definitely we benefit ourselves from the use of therapy, and we definitely see the need in our community for a dialogue around the issue because we know about the stigmatization of therapy in our community. So with that being said, we do also have some people in the building who are practicing therapists, and I think we have some people from the yoga studio and a couple other organizations in the building. So we're definitely probably at certain points in time during this conversation going to be deferring to them. Obviously, we wouldn't want to give anybody any wrong information or say anything that we feel as though might be a trigger or harmful to somebody else. So if you do see us defer, we'll probably be deferring to one of those people in the building.
So before we get started, what I'd like to do, and this was also something that was kind of a collaboration between myself, Aaron, and Shannon, is do just something that's called Speak Their Names. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Pearl Cleese, but she makes the thing of like honoring the ancestors before we get started. Shannon thought it would be cool if we had some type of ritual to formally open the space. And I thought that was a great idea as well. So what I'd like for everyone to do is put on a thinking cap for a quick second and consider either a person that you wish you were able to be vulnerable around, and or one person who deserves to see you as your best self. And again, your best self is with your vulnerability, with your mental health and mental wellness in mind. Consider either someone who you wish you could be vulnerable around, who deserves your vulnerability, or someone who deserves to see you as your best self. And if you're thinking too hard about a person, don't count yourself out the conversation. You deserve to see you as your best self, right? So what I'd like for us to do as a collective is to speak the name of whoever that person is. We'll do it together, and then we'll just have a collective moment of silence before we actually move into the conversation. Y'all need a second to think of a name? If you're thinking too hard, just pick your name. You deserve to see yourself as your best self and be vulnerable with you. Okay, so I want you to actually say their name aloud on the count of three. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. Carla Marie Bush. Work. All right, let's do it. Shout out to Maya over here. She's on my computer clicking us through the slides. So this is just the slide and the flyer that we shared. And just to like introduce ourselves beyond what you probably already know, I'm Brandi Chantalle. I am a Baltimore City teacher. I teach 10th grade English. One of my students is here. Also, shout out to Kelly because he was at the door telling y'all to write your name. He's low-key, high-key, one of my favorites. Everyone knows. So yeah, I teach. I'm also a poetry performer, and before I taught English, I taught poetry performance in DC. I am a wife and a mom and a caretaker. My grandmother is also here in the building. Shout out to the ancestors. And Aaron and I literally met a week ago today.
Doesn't even feel like it's been that long. It feel like it's been like a couple days, yeah.
Who are you?
My name is Aaron Maybin. For those of you that don't know, former professional athlete, now current artist, activist, and an educator in the Baltimore City public school system. Yeah, we were able to meet during the interview that we were having, and during this interview, it's yet to air, but during this interview we started touching on a lot of different topics, but then somehow, some way we got on the topic of mental health. And like literally like within maybe 2 or 3 minutes, you just felt the oxygen kind of being sucked out of the conversation. You know,
you heard a lot of loud voices in the room. Yeah. It's like prior to that, it was myself and 3 other guys, Aaron included, Kandwani included. And I had been relatively quiet prior to that because it was just like black men rumbling, you know, and I was like, I just didn't feel enthused to say like, oh, I think. So I was like, I'm gonna just let y'all have it. And when I feel like there's something to speak on, I'll speak up. And then we got to the topic of mental health, and there seemed to be a clear divide between the expression that it was valuable to express and process your emotions and the thought that there was no value in that because we live in a capitalistic society that doesn't value our lives and et cetera, et cetera. And Aaron and I found ourselves on the same side of the conversation, like, wait a minute. And I was like, wait, I got it. Let me say this. And then my student Kelly met up with us afterwards. And while he was eating with us, the conversation continued. It was just as passionate and loud. And then it carried over into the car. And it was just us 3 in the car. Kelly, tell me when I'm telling too much of your business. But Kelly had said something to the effect of, you know, well, identify with what that other guy was saying, you know, like, I feel like I've been cold since my mom passed. And I was like, wait a minute, no, that wasn't the takeaway. Like, wait, you got the wrong side. And I was just really grateful. Aaron was in the car, and he kind of interjected, and he expressed his experiences. His mom passed, and what it meant for him to be emotionally well or responsible about his emotions, so on and so forth. And then Kelly hit me the next morning with the FaceTime looking at the ceiling, so I couldn't even see his face, and was just like, thanks for yesterday, I really appreciated it. And so my heart, like, so then I sent a message to Aaron, I was like, yo, thank you for yesterday, like, it was a big deal for me. You might be the first masculine presenting black person that told my student, like, feel something other than me and like my crying self, being myself, like, it's okay, feel what you feel. And so I thought that was really powerful. And then our conversation basically continued from that day. And we realized like, oh, wait, this was the conversation we were supposed to have. And we intended to just record it. And then we were going to share it. But the response that we got when we talked about just recording it from you all was so overwhelming that we were like, wait, maybe this actually needs to be a conversation with people and not just have between us to be shown by whomever, whenever. Realizing that oftentimes the people who most need to see those things are not the people who are going to like access them on the internet. So that's where the idea for this discussion came from. And in that same time, we realized that it was Minority Mental Health Month. And so that seemed really valuable as, oh, my husband told me to speak closer to the mic. I hear it now. He's a great man. Yeah, so that's where that idea came from. And just realizing this was like the perfect time and we had to move on it. And here we are a week later.
So yeah, we've shared that, so let's get into it. You want to start off with the statistics?
Before we go to the statistics, just to be cognizant of the mental health professionals or speakers that are in the room, do y'all want to step up really quickly to the mic and introduce yourselves? Rather, could you step up to the mic really quickly and introduce yourselves?
Hey everybody, my name is Shauna Murray Brown. I am the director and executive director of Kindred Wellness here in Baltimore City and Kindred Community Healing. I serve primarily change makers, women of color leaders, in the city of Baltimore from a mind-body perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
How y'all doing? I'm Sinclair Caesar. I'm Assistant Director of Student Life at Loyola University. But my night job, my favorite job is being a mental health speaker, a writer, and a social media influencer. Thanks for being here.
Peace, family. My name is Charles Xavier Kilborn, much less formally known as Charlie. I am a mental health coach, motivational speaker, life coach, and generally just that guy that people end up talking to when they need help. I kind of just turned it into a business. I define my work less by what I do and more by who I'm able to help. So that's what I do.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Devonna Bell, co-founder of the Black Male Yoga Initiative. Changa is the head, but can't be here tonight, so I'm here serving in his place. So we run the Black Male Yoga Initiative, and we are combating the health inequities that we find in our city especially, but all across the nation, by creating health leaders. And we are doing that by creating Black male yoga and Black male yoga teachers. So that's what we do on the larger scale.
Thank you for coming.
I see a few people that are still seated. Do you not want to share your services? Thank you, brother.
My name is Michael Nuha. I'm
Lena.
to the mic, bro. Sorry. My name is Michael Nuha. I'm the Assistant Director of Beacon of Hope. We are a psychiatric rehabilitation program located on Guilford Avenue, and we provide mentoring and just assistance for the community.
Thank you for coming.
So I got an email from some people that said they were definitively going to be late based on where they were coming from. Towards the end, if y'all want to remind me or just hold us accountable, that I said I would give people a chance at the end to speak and introduce themselves if they work in the mental health field and they were not going to be here when we started. I'm just holding y'all accountable to hold me accountable. So if y'all forget. Maya, you want to go to the next slide? Thanks. So there's some statistics on the screen. I can't see them. I'm going to tell you what I know that they say based on memory. And that is, I cannot tell you who I got the statistics from. Again, they're on the screen. I can't see that. But like the overarching point was that African Americans are 20% more likely to have mental illness. And the most common illnesses that we suffer from are major depression, ADHD, suicide specifically in the male community, and PTSD. And then what they added to that was the reasons that we are most likely to be afflicted with those illnesses is because we are most likely to experience homelessness. African Americans make up 40% of the homelessness population. And in addition to that, because we are most likely to be exposed to violence. And so we wanted that to kind of be the kicking off of the conversation. And just with those things in mind, you can go to the next slide, Maya. We were going to share our experiences about why we think, with those numbers in mind, we're still choosing to not receive treatment and or we're being denied access to quality care to actually remedy some of those things.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So, mental health has always been something that was very heavily stigmatized in my life. Growing up, you know, the general consensus amongst me and my homeboys was that anybody that was going to therapy or that classified themselves as mentally ill was crazy, you know. And as Dave Chappelle said one time, you know, the most dismissive thing that you can call somebody is crazy, you know, because it's not taking into account that all the decisions that we make really have a root, and all the things that we feel, you know, that energy doesn't just go nowhere. Like it rests on us and in us and through us, and it affects us in a lot of different ways. So that was something that I always dealt with after the death of my mother. I lost her when I was 6 years old. So throughout the next 4 or 5 years of my life, I had a lot of situations in which I was acting out, in which I was fighting. I got put out of 2 schools. You know, there was a lot of issues behavior-wise that manifested themselves. And really socially, like just in my neighborhood, there were certain things that were just triggers for me. And I couldn't really understand why I would just be so quick to snap, you know, but it was something that I always saw, that I think my parents and me always saw as an issue that was just a behavioral issue. And, you know, I was disciplined for it, and, you know, it kind of continued for some time. Fast forward to, you know, when I got to college, I felt as though I'm at the age now where I might not be a grown man, but I'm old enough to understand the weight of the decisions that I make. I'm old enough to be held responsible for those decisions. So in my mind, I'm a person that's in control. You know, there were several instances in college where, due to a lot of stress that I was dealing with at the time because of death, because of different traumas that I was experiencing in my personal life and in relationships, that I found myself kind of feeling like I was losing control on reality, on the reality that I knew at that point in time, which for me as an athlete was dangerous. So that was the first time that during my teenage years, somebody suggested that I go to therapy, and immediately I shut down the idea. You know, I shut it down immediately because that was something that I always was taught to associate with weakness, especially growing up as a man in a city like Baltimore, where we tend to not create space for one another to be vulnerable, to be open, to be in pain. We kind of have this ideology that we always gotta project that we're good to everybody. I think Brandi was, she's been holding me accountable on that front for the past few days that we've been having conversations, because that's my typical reaction when somebody asks you how you're doing. I'm good, I got it, you know what I mean? But the reality was that I wasn't. And it took me so long just to be comfortable enough to even say that I wasn't, that I feel like I did myself a disservice. Long story short, I wrestled with depression, I've wrestled with anxiety, I've wrestled with a lot of different things that I didn't really know how to name because I refused to call them what they were. And over the past couple years, I've kind of been going through this transformation where I've just been prioritizing my own self-care in a way that I haven't ever really done before. And a lot of things kind of had to conspire to kind of push me in that direction. But as I've been going on that journey, I recently did start going back to see a therapist. And for the first time, I actually went with the intent of getting something out of it. I went with the intent of trying to see if this was something that was viable for me. I went with an open mind. And for the first time, I actually felt like I was in a space where I could lift a lot of that weight that I had sitting on me off of my chest in a way that didn't feel as destructive as I used to do it before. You know, and I'm not gonna say that it's been a be-all, end-all. I've definitely had some negative experiences with it as well, but one of the things that I've kind of realized is like all of us just deserve and need really spaces that we can just go, if for no other reason than to unpack stuff that we're dealing with. To be seen and heard in ways that we're uncomfortable being seen and heard by other people, you know,
or we're denied being seen and heard by other people.
Yeah, exactly. So during this time, I've kind of just been asking myself a lot of questions and doing a lot of soul searching on the issue. And I feel as though for all the time that I saw myself as being weak for not having everything together, I'm now starting to see the strength in being able to own that and understand that, all right, now that I know where I'm at, what do I have to do in order to move forward? And I know that that therapy looks and feels different for a lot of different people because it takes many different forms. With some of the kids that I teach, we center around the idea of art therapy, you know, music therapy, you know, different forms of expression that our kids typically don't resort to in moments where we feel overwhelmed. And just seeing how beneficial it's been, not only in my life, but in the lives of the children that I work with every day. I feel as though it's a need right now for us to have a real dialogue about not just mental health, but what self-care really looks like for us, because we're the ones that are oftentimes in the positions where were struggling with it the most. So that was my experience.
As a head nod, if you don't already know, most of the artwork that's surrounding us in the room is actually Aaron's work. And in addition to that, what's on the screen are some, like photographs of, in addition of his work. He had noted like art therapy, and so I just wanted to make sure that like that was visible. I grew up in a home that normalized suffering. I think the Black experience often dictates that we are resilient by nature, and we rely and lean into our resilience without recognizing that it's only one part of what makes us us, right? And so thankfully, I grew up in a home with a grandma who was very hippie and spiritual and into metaphysics. And so the benefits of therapy and like emotionally being aware of myself was not lost on me, although she made a point of telling me very often that I was very sensitive. So my experience, my mom passed away when I was 9, and I'm a crier now, and I was a crier then, and I'm pretty sure I just cried my eyes out. The flip though was that my brother became a very angry person, and he carried a lot of emotions regarding my mom's passing, and the narrative that he told himself was that he was responsible, and if he had behaved XYZ way, he could have prevented it or helped in stopping it, something of that effect. And so I think my first interaction without recognizing it with someone seeking mental wellness was my brother. He started doing like kickboxing, and he was like enrolled in things in and out, and my grandmother was literally trying everything because she recognized that there was like this anger in him. And it was rooted from that experience whether or not he talked about it, and more often than not he didn't talk about it. And so it was just what it was. And as that's happening, my father was in and out of jail. In a spirit of transparency, I'm a very transparent person. My senior year of high school, I had an abortion. And then I was suicidal. And I was no longer with my grandma. I was in North Carolina with my father, who was now out of jail, and my stepmother. And they are not the most emotionally aware people. And so I remember like being balled up on the floor at my church in the bathroom, not just in the church, because that would have been a hot mess. In the bathroom, it was a single bathroom, to myself, like bawling my eyes out. And my father said to me something to the effect of, like, I had called his bluff, like, you don't ask how I'm doing. He was the only one that knew, like, it was his idea for me to have it, and he did not tell my stepmom. And so I was existing in a house where it was his and I, and we had this secret, and I was falling apart, and nobody else knew but him, and he was not checking in on me. And when I said something to him about it, his response was, "I'm sorry, I can't be your mom." And in saying that, what he was saying was like, I put a roof over your head, you have clothes on. My father, was about that life growing up. And so we were like very into what it looked like aesthetically and material things. And so I was laced and I was cute in high school, but I was a mess. And his way of dismissing that was saying like, I can't be a woman. And what he associated with being a woman was like nurturing and being present for me emotionally. And so again, like it was like, all right, well, I'm good, I can handle it. And I moved forward with that. And it wasn't until years later, to when me and my husband were considering getting married, that I actually was like considering going to therapy. It didn't seem like a viable option. I mean, it just wasn't something that had crossed my mind at all. And then things fall apart happened. And stuff hit the fan for my husband and I. We were like, okay, so are we about to get married or not? Like, what are we doing? And we both realized that we needed to like be talking to somebody, and that the things that we wanted to build, we had no example of how to do that. We knew we had a lot of toxic examples, and we did not want to emulate what we saw them do. And so we were going to have to unlearn a lot of our habits, which is kind of something I have referenced to you, and then put ourselves in a space of wellness, right? And so I started going to therapy by myself for about 6 months. Then my husband started going with me, and we would alternate. 1 week I would go by myself. God bless you. That's my baby, y'all. The next week we would go together. The following week I'd go by myself. The next week we go together. And I was put into a space where I was really able to start unpacking some things. What was interesting, kind of to what Aaron said, was that most recently he went and actually felt like there was a chance for him to do something or like make a change. I felt like I went to a therapy for a certain amount of time, not really expecting anything to come of it. and not being fully transparent or fully willing to see myself, which is ultimately a waste of money. If you are going to therapy, don't waste your money. But I spent a long time just going, and we were kind of going through the motions, and it wasn't really honestly and truly until the beginning of this year that I was ready to start doing the work that I had been talking about for 2 years in therapy. And so I think prior to that, I had told myself that like I was fine and I was high functioning, and you know, like it looks great, but just knowing that like in reality there was a lot that I needed to kind of process for myself individually, and then for my husband and I to like exist in a space of wellness. And that's what pushed me towards actually seeking care and being intentional about my own wellness, which is kind of sad if you think about it. I think something else we said was like having children made us more conscious of who we were as it relates to being emotionally aware. By no means do I say that you should have a child if you're taking too long to get to know yourself, but having a daughter also made me really accountable for knowing that I was going to be her how-to for womanhood, and I didn't want to be slacking. I didn't want to sell her short just by existing in like my lower self. And so that's something else that pushed me towards operating out of my higher self. So to turn the conversation over, I know we skipped to the side to show Aaron's pictures, but if you could go back, Maya. The question just said, with the statistics that we shared earlier in mind, what are some of the reasons that you all know that we either choose to not get treatment, reasons that we're denied access to quality care? Like, what are your personal experiences? This is just like a moment where I want to invite you all to step up and go to the mic. And if we spend like a few seconds and everyone's staring around, I guess we'll just continue to talk y'all to death. But yeah, what are your experiences? What are the reasons that you all either know of or know for yourself that you are not seeking treatment, and again, or just are not getting quality care when you do attempt to seek treatment?
Hi, my name is Kara, and I'm in school for social work down the street at UMB. And I interned at the detention facility for girls called Waxter. And a lot of the girls, they get arrested when they fight. And then a lot of depression in black children comes out as anger and aggression. But, you know, in like different schools, depending on where you go to school, what county you go to school, you can get arrested before you can get like extra services. And then once you get arrested, you get services. So I see that instead of having someone to talk to them or having more therapists in schools, they just kind of get filtered through. So that's, yeah. So that's something I've seen so far.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I use she, her pronouns. One of the reasons why I chose to not receive treatment was growing up in Baltimore and my surroundings, everything was normalized. Destruction, dysfunction, violence, injustices, poverty. I mean, every piece of black pain that you can imagine was normalized, and it took me to congregate with other black women who were experiencing the same type of hardships, but it took me some time to really attach myself to going to see therapy. So I go to therapy, and it's been very helpful for me, but it took me some time to really realize that the environment that I was raised in, the environment that I live in, the environment that a lot of my friends and peers live in, it's just not normal. But we've normalized things so much that it's hard to really imagine what life is without your pain. And I know for me, I want to know who I am without my pain. I want to be able to identify myself without pain. And so it really took some time to seek who I could go to. And I mean, I got affordable health care, so I'm able to go for free. And I know other people don't have that benefit, but there are a lot of free services that are out there.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, so I'm like, I'm sorry, y'all.
Pull the mic down a little bit so you can
I'm sorry, there we go. I'm very stressed out right now. I think as far as getting denied access to care, and there's not enough time for me to say what I really feel in this forum, but a lot of these programs purposely there's a misallocation of funding, or there's misappropriations, or whatever, and it's done on purpose. And I'm gonna say this straight up out loud. The city of Baltimore and Maryland ought to be ashamed of itself, because we are one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest state in this country. And they put more money into rebuilding prisons and this and that than to mental health. Bottom line, and this is the most succinct way I can say, I feel like I'm about to bust right now. They do not care about us, these systems. I've gone to therapy. I just lost my therapist because she wanted to discharge me without letting me know. So I know for me, I know that the help that I need does not exist. I hope nobody else feels like that, but I told you, Aaron, I'm about ready to pop because I don't have time to really get into what I want to say, but I'm just saying, y'all, like...
Speak,
sister.
Can I just say one thing to you?
Yes. I'm very serious about this, about what I'm saying, but I'm listening to you, though.
My only thought, right? My grandmother is like my conscience in my head, and so when you said the healthcare I need does not exist, my immediate thought is that energy follows thought, right? And so if you've decided for yourself that it is not out there, then it's not.
Well, I'm going to give you the rationale as to why I said that. Because just like we're having this discussion, like I told Aaron, I have had for years, I do a lot of community work and activism and whatever, for years, have tried to get my voice out there. And every time I tried to have an event, the people that said they would show up wouldn't show up. I'm saying it to say because when I leave, and I know I'm speaking it, but the reality, I told him even as we speak, I want to go out there and lay in them tracks right now. As we speak, I'm not going to be here and be cute. I'm not going to do it. But I know when I leave, everybody's going to leave out of here. They're going to go about their business. Nobody's going to sit here and stop and think. Because when I was out there crying tears a minute ago, nobody in here came to talk to me and stuff for Aaron. So that's facts right there. People don't care. They don't care. And we can sit here and talk about it and be cute all we want to. It's reality. People like me are hurting that actually want to be dead right now as we're speaking. I wish I was dead. Speaking into existence or not, I struggle with this every day of my life. And I do the work. Nobody's pouring back into me. The city does not care about people. The state does not care about people. They do not take mental health seriously. And when this conversation is done, it's going to go right back to the same stuff. Nothing's going to change.
What does doing the work mean to you?
For example, money. We have all this money. I helped Baltimore City Health Department to get $5 million for trauma for Baltimore City schools. I have no clue where the money went to. Why is it that there's more money for funding for, like I said, all these this and that, but Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, that are right up the street, don't care about what people like me go through. They care about shooting needles in our behind. You feel what I'm trying to say? And not only that, but the fact that as a state of Maryland, we're supposed to be known for top tier for mental health in this country, yet they don't care about us. If we're going to talk about this thing, we need to actually talk about it, not around it. And we got to stop waiting for famous people to kill themselves to talk about suicide. Well, you know what I'm trying to say? And I'm saying a lot right now, but I'm telling y'all, you got people sitting here looking at me that probably think I'm crazy right now. They're not thinking about me. I'm sitting here talking straight up with y'all right now. I'm not here to be cute.
Right. What I'm thinking is, right, your wellness is your responsibility. So when I'm saying what is doing the work, you reference Hopkins, you reference the state of Maryland. I'm saying what have
I done?
Like for you,
I
you know,
lied. I walk. I go to the harbor every day. I listen to music. I exercise. I do a lot. But what I'm saying is, if I'm pouring into my people in these communities, right, and nobody's pouring back into me, just like, and I'm gonna say this one last thing. You mentioned responsibility. Let me tell you something. You're right. But let's go to the part of mandated reporting.
Say that again.
Mandated
reporting.
Right, those that notice about. If these systems say that, oh, they have an obligation, they have the responsibility, we're supposed to report if we even think you're suicidal, homicidal. Why are they not out there making sure that they help people like me before we get to that point? Because the crisis systems only have one person at this time of day working on them. Real talk, try them. I try them every day. One person on the city and county end. They don't care about people. But if I tell you, if I go outside right now and do what I want to do and lay on those tracks right now, which is what I literally want to do right now.
You
now
go outside, I'm following you.
But you know what? But
and
that's
you know
real.
that.
See, I trust you would do it.
You know that.
But the people, I trust you. I've known him since he was a little boy. I know his story with your mother. And I'm sorry but I thank God for you. And I told him that because he's the only one that embraced me. But I'm going to tell you right now, some of the same people in this room that know me, when I was going through my stuff, they didn't respond to me. The same people in this room. So we going to talk about it. Let's be real.
So this is what I said to you when we were sitting down right here. The one thing that I want this to, no, don't leave the mic yet. Because that's what everybody else does.
Right.
And that's what I told you at the beginning of this conversation. You're used to everybody not wanting to hear what you got to say.
Right.
But that's not the space that we created today. And if we're going to talk about it, then let's be really intentional about discussing what this stuff looks like when we are in dire straits.
Right.
Like, I don't know how other people in this room receive that. Like, you know, I'm trying to hold it together, but I really did grow up with this woman. So for her to look me in my eyes and tell me that she's at a point where she wants to end it, that does something to me. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, and I think that as a society, we don't, especially as a culture, we don't set up villages for ourselves outside of the bullshit that the government offers us. You know what I mean? Like I'm with you on your skepticism of that. That was me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I had to overcome that just to end up going back to try to find some way to make sense of the things that I was struggling with.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it wasn't a therapist that brought me back. It was my village. It was my sister. It was the mother of my children. It was my kids themselves. It was the community that I brought, that I built around myself, that even when I say I'm good, they're like, you're not.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's what I want to talk about, because at the end of the day, like, I got no control over what City Hall does.
Yeah.
I got no control over how that budget is allocated. But you have never seen me go to City Hall or anybody else to raise a dime to do what we should be doing for ourselves. So my thing is, and that's one of the reasons why I have the yoga initiative here, why we have some of the other people in the building outside of just the clinical physicians, because mental health and self-care looks differently for different people. You know what I mean? Like, without the yoga, without the meditation, without the reading for me, which for me is a thing, without like my artwork, I'm not functioning. You know what I mean? Like, and I know I know what that recipe is for me. Right. How do we help to build that around you and around our other brothers and sisters that we know are struggling and suffering? And I don't want to just leave here with this pessimistic ideal of this not existing. Right. If you're saying you haven't found it yet, then what does it need to look like for you to be all right?
And that's why I'm telling y'all right now. I'm like, y'all record. Let me just. I've done Facebook Live videos of myself when the last time when I overdosed. I had it on Facebook Live. That was this month, a few months ago. And I'm telling y'all what it looks like. I'm gonna tell y'all. I'm looking at y'all. All y'all in this room have responsibility. Like I said, I have a plan on going out there, landing on the tracks, and I leave up out here. And it's not a sympathy call. Because I want y'all to understand, and I told myself, if my life, I don't want to have to take my life, but if I have to, just to get somebody to wake up so we can stop, this is a call to action. My black brothers and sisters talking about the white man ain't this, ain't that. What are we doing to each other? We call each other nigga, but you better not call us one. No. We're killing each other with our own words. It has to stop. We don't get a scapegoat. We can bring, all we're doing, historical trauma. I didn't want to do a panel on historical trauma for years. Nobody wanted to work with me. Historical trauma. So what we do is, as African Americans, say that, oh, but if we take on what the slaves did, it makes it less hurtful. But we can kill each other. We kill each other every day. These homicides, we're doing it to each other. PTSD, I have it. Anxiety, depression, I have it. We're hurting each other. Y'all sitting up when y'all on your phones talk about this. Y'all sitting there talking about who wore in this and Nicki Minaj did what? Why do we are as black people doing that, talking about the white man? The white man, if you want to talk about the white man that's up in office, he's taking what we giving him. Baltimore. So I'm just putting the call to action, y'all, seriously. And I'm not saying this for y'all sympathy. Because I've had people call me crazy when I was a missing person. Oh, she crazy. I've had them do it. I've seen stuff on social media call me crazy. Nobody asked me how I was doing. So I'm just letting y'all know right now. I ain't going to take up all this time, but y'all, I just really, you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not saying this to be cute. I'm not here being cute. I was talking about this before I came out, was about ready to jump off a bridge. And we're laying some people out because...
But you also told me that you didn't even know about this event until you were looking on your phone.
Right.
And I don't want to share your own story, but you said you were just looking for something.
Right.
As I told you when we were sitting over there in that seat, you supposed to be here. This conversation is supposed to be happening. And I hear what you're saying about people that you've reached out to, that it's people's nature to let us down. You know what I mean? Right. I don't know anybody in life that has come through for me 100 times out of 100. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I told you personally about even some of the times that we've crossed paths. And maybe I even wanted to be able to sit a little bit. But you know what? The next time I see you, I'm going to be more intentional about it. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's usually a reflection of the people, not you. So
Yeah.
I don't know your experience when you're saying like people have called you crazy. Oftentimes, a lot of people aren't checking with other people because they're self-absorbed about what they're dealing with their own stuff. You know, like, and that's just me speaking from my personal experience. My first thought when you said like, oh, they're not checking in with me, I'm like, oh, that's not your village. Like, those aren't your people. But it could also just truly be that they have their own stuff happening, so they can't see beyond their wall. You know, like, it's hard to save you if I'm drowning. And that's like a lot of people's realities too when we talk about like learned helplessness. Hey, when we talk about learned helplessness, or when we talk about like normalized suffering, you're putting out these flags, but for everyone who's used to seeing that all the time, it's not actually a warning to them. It's like, well, that's what I've been seeing.
But see, this is why, and I'm gonna say this one last thing, I promise, seriously. And I go to an event, I know I keep saying it, but I'm telling y'all, I do so much around this, and I've been to a lot of forums, and I feel like I'm gonna leave up out of this, and everybody gonna do the same stuff, and it's gonna be the same stuff. And how you doing? When they asked me how I was doing, I didn't respond. Nobody caught me that. I wanted to say I wish I was dead, but I was signing in.
But maybe the solution isn't to attend the forums. Maybe it's to take some time for you. You know, like,
but remember when we were also talking about, I said, I felt, and anybody in this room that does this work, that works in this social justice space, that works in building community, we know it's thankless work. It is thankless work. It's long nights, it's longer days, it's you literally taking, like, I was sharing with Brandy last night, like, even since we said that we were putting this event up, you know what I mean? Like every time I've gone to my DMs and looked and tried to interact with people to see what questions that they wanted to have discussed and all that, I take that stuff on.
Right.
And there's a lot of times where that stuff weighs on me to the point where, like, I can't, the people around me that really know and love me know what it looks like. You know what I mean? I'm not good at that time. And there's times where I got to pull it back for a few days and do self-evaluation. Because at the end of the day, I know that I want to be here for my children. You know what I mean? And not check out early. You know what I'm saying? So I got to know that in order for me to maintain that balance, sometimes it requires me saying I love my community, but in a couple days I'll get back to it.
Yeah.
Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yep.
And when you're feeding literally everybody else around you but yourself, that is not a sustainable model.
And you're actually only supposed to feed people from your overflow.
Right.
So if it's not your overflow, everything else you're giving them is yours. You know what I mean? So right now, I'm a crier. I want to cry. Right now, you say like you're in here on empty, and you're still going to spaces and you're pouring into people. You don't have it to pour into them.
Right.
And it's okay to say, I choose me. That's actually the ideal thing. One of my girlfriends is going through a divorce, and the narrative that she's taught herself is that when she chooses herself, she's either selfish or petty. And both of those things are a lie. And I was saying to her, I have sentence frames in a note. When I like say something to myself that I know is not true, if I can catch that it's not true, I literally have to talk myself down. Like, okay, what I'm telling myself is X, Y, Z. I can or cannot recognize that that is not actually true. What is true is X, Y, Z. What is not true is, and I am literally talking myself out of whatever like false thought that I'm having. But again, what the main point is that if you are pouring into people without having a full cup, then all you're doing is you're depleting yourself. And you don't owe anyone, literally anyone, like your demise. That is not what your village, whoever your actual village is, wants for you. You know, in the same vein that like my husband knows, if I'm on low, I need a second. I cannot be present for him. I cannot hold down my grandmother. I cannot be present for my daughter if I'm not present for me. And so when I was saying, and I just want to be clear because we don't have the relationship that you two have, when I'm saying like maybe it's not that you need to be out at those forums, maybe you need a second for you, it's because you do need to figure out what it takes to refill yourself. And for everybody, it's not therapy. For everybody, some people don't even recharge in their village. Some people recharge solo, but like figuring out what it looks like for you for all the years that you say you've been doing the work is priority more so than City Hall and Baltimore and the dollars you got. Because ultimately, like you said, like those dollars didn't do anything for you, you know? And so like figuring out what that means for you is everything. Everything. And anything else as it relates to rallying or trying to get other people to recognize is secondary. Because The call to action, like you going on a train track, that's not a call to action for me. You know what I mean? Like that's just devastation. That's just devastating. And one of the things that we had talked about is like widespread images of like a multi-generational like erasure, like just seeing ourselves being depleted. That's the kind of stuff that people are gonna put all over Instagram, and it's just gonna be a viral footage of somebody dying. And like you said, it doesn't progress us, it doesn't move us forward, it desensitizes us to seeing those images. That's not helpful for us. You leaving the space, that's not helpful for us. But you taking a second to do what you need to do to figure out how you refill.
And then helping the next person who's exactly where you are right now not get on those tracks. That's what I want for you, sister. Like I promise, like, yo, I don't, you know me, I don't BS nobody. I shoot straight with everybody. This world is a better place because you are here. There's too many people in this city and every other one across this country that just want to be seen when cameras are around.
Right.
I see you. I see you. Even when you don't want to be seen, I see you. The world needs people like you, but we need a whole you. And not the pieces that you're still trying to put together. We love you. You feel me? And we're gonna keep on talking. I want everybody to have something to say to have a space to get it off. But I didn't want you just to walk away from this mic without us diving into that a little bit more. And this is not the only question that we're gonna be asking. So if there's something else that you want to get off, don't feel like your voice is stifled in this room.
And don't apologize for speaking your voice. That's literally what the mic's there for. You know?
So y'all, seriously, God bless y'all for this.
God bless you.
I struggle every day not to take my life, and I'm tired. So thank y'all.
I'm glad you're here. That's my grandma.
Hi, my name is Amber, and I just want to take a moment to let that settle. I wanted to answer the original question of what are some of the reasons we choose not to receive treatment or get denied access to quality care, and I can only speak from experience on the former, not the latter. And I think that a lot of us choose not to receive treatment because of, I think that as a black community, we think that the only thing we've ever inherited from America is trauma and pain, and if we let that go, we really don't know who we are. And
I literally said that exact same thing to her. What was it, this morning?
I truly believe that because a lot of the rap music and the soul music come from a place of hurting and come from a place of you wronged me and I got through it, or you wronged me so I wronged you. That's what the nature of blackness has meant and what blackness has been defined as: violence and pain, and all wrapped up in something beautiful and creative and something marketable, but still pain nonetheless. And I think that it's very scary to imagine the other side of healing, to imagine that healing really exists and that people see you when you don't want to be seen. And I think that it's even scarier when it's not someone you think needs help. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of us, whether you want to admit it or not, perceived that she needed help just from appearance. But like you said, you were laced, you were Gucci, you were cute, but you were dying inside. And those are the people that when they're gone, you're shaken to the core. You're like, damn, I thought she was good. She looked like me. I thought I was good, but I'm not. So it's just scared of the real reflection. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Shan, really quickly before you speak, I say really quickly with like a grain of salt because I'm verbose, but just stay with me. I just thought of something that I had shared with him yesterday when you were saying like, you know, if you say like, oh, you hurt me, so I'm hurting you, but like it doesn't feel good to me. And I was like, oh, okay. And my grandmother she was in the space but didn't hear that part and started to interject and kind of say like, don't act like that, it's fine. You know, like that's my granddaughter, because he and I didn't know each other. And what happened instead was he checked out mentally, even though he was in my living room. He literally just stood there and sat like this. He was like somewhere else. And I could tell something was wrong. And so like later on, and again, the you good thing, I said to him like, you good? Clearly he wasn't good, but like that was what I thought to say, to just kind of check in with him. And he said, no, but I'm working on it. And I said, okay, well, it's never my desire for anyone to be in my space, my home specifically, and to be uncomfortable, no more than I want to be in my own home uncomfortable because you're uncomfortable. So, you know, like if there's something I could do, let me know. And he stayed checked out, and maybe about 10 or 15 minutes later, he said, you know, earlier I'd like to take you up on what you said, like I'd like to talk to you about what you could do. And he pulled me to the side. We actually went to the front door. I didn't even tell my grandma about this. We went to the front door and he said, you know, earlier you were saying these things in jest, but I was raised with sisters, and their idea of feminism was really demeaning and dehumanizing to men. And so when you said that, what I heard was my sister's voice. And I told Aaron, is it okay if I cuss around your baby? Right, I'm like, my baby, no, not to try it. But I was like, you know, my initial thought when he said that, I was like, man, if you don't suck that, like my initial thing was to be defensive, because I knew my intention wasn't to cause harm. And so I was responding to my intention and not my impact. And so I was initially like, and this guy was a big dude too. So like, that's another dynamic in my head where I'm like, yo, big old, like you mad? And that was my initial thought, right? But then I was like, yo, this man pulled me aside to call a foul, like say like, yo, you hurt my feelings. And I was like, dang, that's a big thing. And how much better would we be if right in the moment when those things happen, if we could say like, yo, I'm offended, or yo, that hurt me, that was bothersome to me, and then have that person have to reconcile right in that moment, which of course requires a mature receiver, right? Because my internal dialogue was not mature immediately. And it took me a second, again, I'm a crier, so then I was like crying because I realized like my impact was terrible, and I was like, yo, like, for the record, I wasn't trying to demean you, I'm a very sarcastic person. He said something to the effect of like, you know, maybe you assume that we can interact this way because of my relationship with your grandmother, but we don't have that relationship. And I was like, ooh, okay. But I also said, you know, the reality is I don't assume anything because of my grandmother. I'm just naturally kind of an aggressive person, and so you just got me because that's what you get and we in my house. But my intention was not to offend. It was not to cause harm. And so, you know, like I apologized, and now I'm crying in the front door, and we both just looking like boo-boo the fool. And then my husband walked in and was like, who is this big nigga at my door? Right. But I thought it was really powerful for him to be able to say early, and especially again, masculine, big. So like, I was sitting over here like smiling to myself a second ago when Aaron was talking about therapy, because I was like, and my husband like affirmed what he said. I was like, there better be black men in this room affirming therapy. But I just thought it was a really powerful thing. Like there's a lot of power in being able to say like, that hurt me. And then even more power in the recipient being like, hey, my bad, versus like writing somebody off or discounting their emotions as if they didn't actually acknowledge like something was like triggered in them. I think what happens more commonly is that we disregard it. And so that's another thing that teaches us to exist in like this state of like, I'm good. Because if you express that you're not good, no one's actually responding to it anyway. And so that's one of those things that casually reinforces the thought that we don't need to actually express how we really feel. Go ahead, Shannon, I'm done.
I wanted to also, I forgot to add this, but sometimes when we are denied care, we don't necessarily have to rely on Western medicine. And I think that is something that we don't really take in consideration a lot, because we're not the majority in the country or the majority in Western medicine, but there are so many other rituals and different practices that we can use and really master that doesn't really rely on just going to therapy. There are so many other resources that are there and practices that are there other than Western medicine.
I wasn't originally gonna talk because I'm also pretty long-winded, but
Can you speak into the mic a little bit?
yeah, I got you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm bad at mics because I'm clumsy. My bad. I'm gonna keep my hands back here. But I was saying I wasn't originally gonna speak, but then when Sis started speaking, that really kind of like spoke to the part of me that never got treatment. So I started drinking when I was 12 years old, and I never thought my life was worth saving, so I never took steps to save it. I couldn't understand why the people I loved me back. I couldn't understand what about me was worth redemption, was worth building and pouring into. Like, we talk about overflow, we talk about sense of self, but not only did I not know who I was, I didn't want to know who I was. I didn't have a concept of this person is worth getting to know. I thought I was crazy, and that was enough for me. It was like, I'm crazy, I'm drunk, this is who I am, and this is who I'll be. And like everybody has said, we get very comfortable and connected to our trauma.
We embrace our trauma.
Yeah, and I was okay with it. I loved that I hated myself because I knew it so familiarly. I was so well acquainted with self-depreciation that was my favorite thing about myself.
That's a form of, I want to let you finish, but I forget who it was that shit. Matter of fact, what's Oprah's girl that, yeah. She talked about in one of her videos about how that is a form in many cultures of protest. The whole accepting of this, you know what I mean, wearing this role as a badge of honor. But I think that when we do it a lot of times as a culture, it's to our own detriment.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly
Like because we understand that is a coping mechanism. You know what I mean? That's like our de facto. You know what I'm saying?
And it creates people that don't understand duality. So I didn't understand the other side of it, and I didn't want to. And I kept drinking until I quit. I'm actually 1 year, 7 months, and 1 day sober today.
Hey.
Thank y'all so much. But for me, it was what y'all are talking about. I went to the places, I did all the things, and I had to realize that, one, the people that love me aren't stupid. I had somebody that cared a lot about me, like, okay, so I'm dumb. I'm like, no. She's like, okay, so why would you insult the person I love so much? And then I had another person say to me, like, oh, your favorite flower is dandelions. I thought it was because they were resilient. I thought it was because they were weeds. And she was like, oh, yeah, you're full of wishes. In these little moments, like drawn together, essentially said to me that it was me. I was running from myself. I am also a man of trans experience, so a lot of my mental health work is specific to the Black queer community, because self-care looks very different for us when Black lives matter, but not all Black lives matter in the same breath. But I had to get to know me, and I realized that a lot of times we inherit these houses, and we so committed to the house that we don't realize you can tear that bad boy down. The land is still yours. So I think, to get back to the original question, a lot of people don't realize that they're worth saving. A lot of people don't realize that, like, you can save yourself just by deciding that you're worth pouring into it all. We grow up in a culture that, like, automatically teaches you that trauma is your destiny, but it's not. Wholeness is. And whole people don't make good consumers. So of course they don't tell you how to heal yourself, because then you ain't gonna be walking around.
They don't want you to love you.
Yeah, they don't want you to love you.
But that's one of the reasons why I said it's important for us, especially in these spaces, to talk about what that village looks like around us.
Absolutely.
That does sustain us when we feel as though those institutions fail.
Absolutely. So it's you, essentially, and I think, like, you has to be specific, like you all were saying. What does self-care look like for you? For me, it looked like quit drinking. And I didn't go to a facility. I should have, because don't withdraw in your house, y'all. Don't do that. No, I'm so serious. Joking, but not. I found out after I was 7-8 months clean that could have killed me. Me sitting in my apartment with a gallon of cucumber water thinking I was just flushing out my system. I should have gone somewhere and gotten help. Instead, I sat in my house and drank my water and waited. But all of that to say, like, don't be afraid of healing. And don't let anybody make you believe that you're not worth saving, because they will. And it sucks because we grow up in a culture that literally wants you to hate yourself, especially as black people. Meanwhile, we magic, and nobody teaches you that. So then you have to teach yourself, and then you get caught in the, I'm tired, and I don't want to do this anymore. So I think for a lot of people, that lack of getting treatment or receiving it or being open to it at all is not realizing that you're even worth redemption. Not realizing that you can be a whole person because you're surrounded by a whole bunch of other people that aren't whole. So you just exist halfway and think that that's normal, but it's not.
That's actually also one of the questions that we got, was like talking about some of the ways that our environments don't actually promote our wellness.
We actually knocked out a couple questions so far.
When y'all see me writing, I'm like, ooh, we got that question. Okay.
But yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. It was, for me at least, I had to have the audacity to save my life. Yeah, and then once I realized it, like, it wasn't easy, but now I'm my favorite person on the planet. I love me so much that I have so much more to give everybody else. And I had to figure it out. So like, know that everybody in this room is beautiful and amazing, and everything you need is you got it already. You just have to have the audacity to choose yourself first. And then once you choose you'll choose therapy, you'll choose telling your best friend, okay, listen sis, I quit drinking, so I need you to call me at 2:05 because the bar's closed at 2. Make sure I'm still in my house. It looks like accountability. It looks like letting people tell you when you're messing up. It looks like being open and receptive to that hard and tough learning and loving. And it's not always going to be comfortable, but you got to change your relationship with discomfort, because discomfort ain't a bad thing. That's your truest teacher. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
How y'all doing? My name is Chris Francis. I'm Brandy's husband.
You fine?
I respond to him, he, King. I don't really have anything crazy deep to say. My reasons for not going to therapy are pretty surface level, but my whole life I just kind of thought I was straight. And even when I had problems, I wasn't victimizing myself. I knew that my issues were my problem, or my doing. The cause of my problems was myself. But I thought, like, okay, I'm not at that level of maturity yet. Like, I'm gonna get there. I'll be able to fix myself. So the idea of letting another man or woman that was not my mama tell me how to fix myself seemed ridiculous. And Brandy shared with y'all, she was going to therapy for 6 months before I joined her, because she was doing her thing, and I was like, yeah, that's something she needs. Like, I'm a good dude. Like, I'm a good person. Like, I'm sorry that I do bad things. Like, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, but like, I'm gonna get it right. And 6 months after her being in therapy, I was like, wow, I'm still not getting it right. Like, and this is bad. Like, when she says things fall apart, like, we almost burned our house down. Not literally, but yo, even figuratively can be worse than literally burning your house down sometimes. So, yeah. So
God blocked it.
Yeah, we started going to couples therapy. I think a month later, I started going to my own therapist, who's like a OG Baltimore dude. I'm from Silver Spring, like born and raised, and this was my first like real interaction with like Baltimore, and he's like an old head, and he was talking to me crazy, but he also has like multiple degrees and like PhDs, so it was messing me up. And to be completely transparent, like the first time I went, I just had a long laundry list of mess, and I was looking for him to judge me. So I gave him like the PG-13 mess, and he wasn't phased, and I gave him the R mess, and he wasn't phased, and I was like, all right, you want to go triple X? Like, let's go triple X. And he was like, yeah, man, like, I don't know if I told you this, but like, I'm from Baltimore. There's nothing you can say that's gonna like phase me. Like, let's get to the bottom of this stuff so you could be a better person for yourself primarily, but you got a beautiful wife, a beautiful baby girl. Like, let's get to the bottom of it. And that's when I really started digging into like the things that I thought I could handle. I swear, every time we go, or every time I go, he basically reminds me of why I need a professional. And
Hi.
No, that's
But that's why I really wanted you specifically to tell your story tonight, because it's like I didn't even get to share this with, well, I commented on it, but like, this is the first time that me and this brother really, actually yesterday was the first time that we met. Yeah. But when I read a comment on his post, I felt like I knew him. I'm like, yo, because he was talking about his experience, the experience he's kind of laying out today, but the way he described it as like the chillest case of depression ever. I'm like, nigga, that's me. I'm like, yo, like how, like how did somebody else like state it like the exact way that I saw it? Because that's the way that's the reason why I never got help, because I'm like, yo, like, yeah, I'm not good, yeah, I'm not feeling right, but like I'm cool. I'm functioning. You know what I mean? Like, but
I just want to tell y'all real quick, giving your testimony, the parts that you keep inside, the parts that you don't allow people to see, sharing that is super freeing. So last week I shared it on Instagram and I was like, look, nobody but my wife knows this, but I'm gonna share it with y'all. Now I want to tell everybody, like, I'm so happy to have that off my chest, and the support and the responses that I've gotten. And like my close friends have called me and want to have like hour-long conversations like, bruh, I had no idea. I've been dealing with the same thing, like, and I just keep it inside. I don't go to therapy, like, we kick it, everything's good, but like, I feel the same way. Just to give y'all a quick recap, last December, apparently, so this is like on some real Disney stuff, apparently a lot of trauma stems from black mothers dying. So in 2013, my mom passed. Like, for real though, like, apparently as black people, losing our mamas like really messes us up. So in 2013, I was in the military. My mother passed. I leave the military. Since then, I mean, just sadness, right? In and out sadness. It's real intense in the beginning. Then it kind of dies out. Then it comes back in spurts, really unexpected. And I thought that's all it was. Last December, I was angry a lot, and like little things that would like normally like kind of blow me were really blowing me. And it finally came to a head. I don't remember what the rest of the house was doing, but I was sitting in my daughter's bedroom, and like real randomly, like people have suicidal thoughts, and I feel for them and I pray for y'all, but like really quick, I thought to myself, like, if I was to commit suicide, like where in the house would I do it? And that's so unlike me, like that thought, that I was like, whoa, I gotta get into the therapist like tomorrow. So I called like an emergency, and I was like, just the fact that suicide even crossed my mind. I wasn't contemplating suicide, but it was like, I'm really thinking like, where in the house would I do it? Like, where would somebody find me? But I'm not gonna fuck anybody up too bad for the rest of their life. So that's when it happened, and that's when he sat me down, and I was like, yeah, man, I haven't really been feeling myself. And he was like, dog, that's depression. And I dismissed it. I was like, nah, depressed people, you know, they stay in the bed all day. They get the midnight curtains. They do. He was like, nah, man, depression looks like a lot of things. And I say all that to say, and my purpose for posting it on Instagram last week that I didn't really get to because I was so caught up in the story, is that depression, anxiety, all these other like mental illnesses, there's no one thing that it looks like. You know, there's a lot of different ways that these things can show themselves through your everyday actions, through your once a month actions, through your once a year actions. And it's worth talking to a professional. Your homeboys aren't gonna know. Brandy and Aaron, they're not here to diagnose you. They're here to talk about the fact that we need to be having these conversations, and they're initiating the conversation. But you need to see a professional. Everybody does. We all need therapy. We all have trauma. We all need therapy. That's all I want to say.
Hi everybody, I'm Maya. I go by she and her pronouns. So for me, my story is a little different than a lot of people have shared. I didn't really grow up in a household that stigmatized mental illness. My mom is bipolar depression. I've had family members commit suicide, and just it's always been something talked about in my family. So for me, one of the initial reasons I never sought therapy until I finally did was I didn't want to feel like I was just trying to fit in, as silly as that may sound. I knew that just mentally, emotionally, I was dealing with a lot of really off things, but I always would say to myself, no, you're probably just hyping it up because that's what people in your family go through, so you just think you got it because they got it, right? Your mom got this, she probably got it, you so no. So I would kind of always talk myself down from recognizing that there may be something really going on there. And then I kind of finally did get over that hurdle. I had a really depressive month of life where I literally lost so much weight. I slept in the bed for a month straight, ate nothing but cake, and that was it. I just stayed in my bed, and that was me for a month. And the responses I got were mixed, where I realized people would check on me. I pride myself in having a really strong village, but they didn't know how. And that's kind of something I realized with a lot of things I've heard people say up here is your village may want to help you, but not know how. Right, so especially if mental illness is not something they're comfortable with talking about, something that they're used to being out in the open. You know, I can have a friend call me crying. There was a meme and it said, you know, like when your friend FaceTime you crying and you just stare back, you don't know what to say. It's funny, but it's not, right? Because you have people who really are dealing with things and they come to you and people can say things, it'll be okay. Well, I don't feel like it will be, right? So what else do you got? They don't have anything else to give as much as they may want to. So that's just another fear people have is, okay, let's say I do seek out help, people aren't really gonna know how to respond anyway. I'm not gonna get what I need anyway. And then even like kind of Chris just, he put out a nice advertisement for professional therapy. Something that I also struggled with was, I need somebody black talking to me. The first therapist I saw was a white girl at my college campus. And
it's a no for me, dog.
You say what?
I said it's a no for me, dog.
Every time I left out, I thought that was cute, but no, right? Because she would give me things like breathe and count to 10. I told you I think about jumping off of things. I have urges to do things.
Cultural
like
relevance
that.
is real.
Yeah, and you tell me to count to 10. By the time I get to 8, I've probably jumped. So what else do you got? Right? So it just becomes this really frustrating thing of getting out of your own head and realizing, like you said earlier to someone, that the help is there. It's just the work and the time and finding it. And
finding a therapist is a job in itself. Like one that if your therapist makes you feel crazy, that's not your therapist.
I don't even think I've found necessarily the right one yet. You know what I'm saying? But I know that from an accountability standpoint, from a being able to really see myself standpoint, being able to like pull through the layers of the BS, like I need a space for that. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, that's completely real. The whole idea of like, yo, you gotta curate that space around you, from your village to the professional health services that you get. Like, it's real for me. Like the doctor that I see, you know, that's a big deal, you know, and all of this different stuff that is tied to our health. Like, it's important.
Exactly.
And
I think just, go ahead.
I was gonna piggyback on what you said about supporting someone, because that was something else that people had asked, like, how do you support someone with mental illness? And what I have learned in my experience is that it's just a matter of being present. And I pride myself, like my definition of sisterhood is like recognizing smoke signals. So like if my sister friend earlier, we were in here and we were like in the midst of setup, and I got a text from my friend that's going through a divorce, and the text for me was like, oh, you need a phone call. So I'm calling. I've gotten texts and I'm like, oh, Chris, I gotta go. Like somebody needs me right now in this moment. And to put my grandma's business on blast. My grandmother also has bipolar disorder, and she had about a psychosis about a month and some change ago, and she lives with me. That was the first time that's the first time it's happened in general in like over a decade. But since she has lived with me, and she had to be admitted into a hospital, and my husband, bless his heart, had decided that like every day he was gonna go to the hospital and like have a sermon for her. And so he was like ministering to her, and they're having these conversations and they're coming to agreements, and he's like, all right, she's good. And then the next day she would still be acting like somebody that was dealing with psychosis. And he was like repeatedly disappointed, and I said, boo, like it's not our responsibility to bring her out, it's just our responsibility to be present on her way through, you know? And so like I knew that I was just going every day. She was gonna see me every day whether she wanted to or not. We would kick it, you know, I'm gonna like do some check-in questions that allow me to see where she's at, and that would be that. And I didn't have a timeline. It was just, I'm going to be present. And I think in general, like even if you think what sits over here is saying like, I have this repeated feeling, if you're present for somebody, that puts you in a position to be more of a change agent than being on the phone, than being in a text. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything seemingly life-changing, but sometimes just presence is enough. Everybody doesn't need like an outpouring of words, or like me, if I'm about to cry and you hug me, then I'm like the breaking of a dam. I just need presence, you know? And so for me, the way that I define supporting someone when it's a matter of mental illness is just by being present for that person. I think that is really significant oftentimes, especially if a person can't vocalize like what it is that they need from you.
And just to kind of wrap it up, I think it's really great that you said that, because I think the other thing too is sometimes people's mental health, like their mental illness is what's in the way of them getting help. So for some people, like for my depression shows itself not in just always moping around, but I'm not able to do anything. Like I struggle to get dressed. I literally struggle to function. So like you said, so for me, even picking up a phone call is a lot of work. So being present and just understanding a smoke signal and presenting yourself, even if you're not sure you want it, can be what somebody really needs. So I'm glad that you really put that out there just now. But yeah.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Marianne. I go by she and her pronouns. So I'm not a Baltimore native. I've been here 2 years now, but I'm from New Jersey. And in terms of receiving services, I grew up in foster care, so I went through a lot of therapy, unfortunately not by choice, due to sexual, physical, emotional abuse that I received as a child. So my connotation with therapy was always negative because I remember how it was as a child. Now as an adult, I do not have a therapist yet, but I'm working on it because for me, I need to be okay with who that person is, because if not, I'm not going to be able to fully give everything that I need to give. I'm going to hold certain stuff back, and then it's like, well, what's the point of wasting my copay?
Girl.
So in terms of my village and my self-care, when I was in college, I was still in foster care at the time, and they noticed some things and wanted to put me back on drugs. That's another thing. I've been on psychotropic, misdiagnosed, multiple medications, bad side effects, the whole nine. And I started the medicine, and I remember my girlfriends, who are now what I call my village, coming to me like, so Marion, we don't like you on medicine. We'd rather take your mood swings, your highs and lows, than how you are right now. And it felt so good because growing up in care, that was like not what I received. It was like, you need them, take more of them.
Was it like you were a zombie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't like that. So I stopped taking them, and I feel like I've been pretty good. Most recently, I lost my best friend last year in January, and for me, not having childhood friends, not really having a family. I met my mom when I was 18, just to give you an idea. So like my friends have been like they keep me together, and losing her just hit me harder than losing my father, because unfortunately he was one of my abusers. So I was like processing it, but not realizing how I was processing it, because I had unfortunately went through a DV situation at the same time, and it took me to a really low space. So my girlfriend, who actually was in Atlanta, called me every morning, made sure I got up for work. And I say that to say, like, yes, absolutely, if you can get professional help, get it. But for me, during these times where I was suicidal and low and down, my village was what kept me still here, calling me every morning, because a lot of times with depression, you really don't want to get out the bed. And unfortunately, I'm the sole provider for my household, so I had to go to work because I had bills that I have to pay. So that's another crazy side of mental health, right? You can be so low, but on the flip side, you know that adulting is still happening, so you have to somehow still handle business, knowing that you're not okay. And that's just the realness of it. Like, therapy, all that stuff is good, but I still have bills that I have to get paid. I still have a job I have to maintain, because if not, there's no one else that's providing it for me. So now I have this village who saw me as that zombie, but also know when I'm not okay. I can say I'm fine, and they'll be like, no, you're not. What's going on? And it's important to have people like that around you. You don't want someone who, when you say you're not okay, and they're like, bitch, what's wrong with you? Like, you need people who can genuinely support you. Another thing, one of them noticed was when I had lost like 70 pounds, and I was working out like crazy, running a race every month from like a 5K to 6 miles, whatever the case may be. And they noticed that when I was working out consistently, my mental was good, which I had never noticed before. So now recently I started working out. This is like, May was my birthday month, so I consider that like my getting back on track month with self-care. So I do a bubble bath every Sunday by myself with candles. I work out every day, Monday through Friday. I will call my girlfriends if I feel myself being really depressed. And normally it's like, okay, why am I all of a sudden so sad? What is this? And they help me process it. Granted, no, they're not licensed therapists, and they don't have all of these accolades behind their name, but they know how to listen, and they know how to give me feedback to process what it is that I'm feeling. So self-care for me, working out, doing my bubble bath, my girls, that's my village. But I definitely feel like, you know, my negative connotation with therapy comes from what I experienced when I was forced to go through it as a child.
And I definitely don't want people to overlook that working out piece. Like, I think across the board, not just with myself, but everybody that I know, like when you're consistently like working out, not only do you feel better, but you're less tired, you're more energized, like you.
Healing from childhood sexual abuse, and I actually reached out to the therapist that she had on there, and unfortunately, because she's not in Maryland, I can't use her. But I do recommend that podcast because there's so many topics, and you can just look for what you need to hear and check it out. And it's a Black woman, so you know, therapy for Black girls. And if you have like Apple, the podcast app, it's right there. So podcast also, you know, just an idea of other ways for self-care, just to throw it out there.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Samira, and I wasn't gonna share how I feel. Really, I wasn't gonna share how I feel at first because I don't know. I'm not really comfortable with it, but
Thank you for being brave.
Fourth grade, I was molested by my mom's boyfriend. He was 40 years old, right? And I'm sorry, it's so much that I wanted to share. It's like jumbled up in my head, but that went on for about 2 to 3 years. And I think that's when like I first started experimenting with sex. And I kind of felt bad because as wrong as it was, like my body responded to it naturally. And it made me feel nasty about myself. Like I never shared it because I felt like if I did, like I would get in trouble. And so I kept it to myself. But because that sexual aspect of me was kind of turned on, middle school, I began experimenting with sex. I had this one crush. We did it a couple times, and then he told other people, and then I woke up one morning and had the whole school calling me a hoe. And that went on from 6th to 8th grade until I moved back here to Baltimore. But during that time, I also experienced rejection from my father. He would cut me off every now and again when I didn't tell him that his wife was cheating on him, or I didn't want to participate in his childish ass games. And I was also being sexually molested by my stepbrother, who was older than me. And so when I finally gathered up the courage to tell somebody what was going on, I got in trouble for it. And for me, I kind of rejected treatment because anytime I reached out for help, when I was brave enough to share what I was going through or how I was feeling, my mom either told me I was crying too much, I was a crybaby, I need to get over it, or she was always like, you crying now? Like, what you crying for now? Like, suck it up. And so for me, I kind of just rejected treatment. Like, I just felt like if I keep telling people what I'm going through and all I keep getting in response is, suck it up, what you crying for? Or when I did tell her that I was being molested by my stepbrother and her ex-boyfriend, it was, well, what did you do for that to happen to you? It was, they made it as if it was my fault.
Victim blaming.
Like I went, oh yeah, come fuck me. And so I attempted suicide twice or 3 times. But when I finally went to therapy, I got the same type of treatment from my therapist. Like I didn't feel like she was helpful, I guess. Like it was me telling her what was going on, and she was like, well, did you tell your mom? You should tell your mom. And I'm like, I can't tell my mom like I tried to kill myself twice, because then I'm going to go home, I'm going to be punished, because she knew I tried to kill myself. So it was that ongoing thing. So for me, I rejected treatment for a very long time, because I just felt like it wasn't helpful, but it will result in a punishment for me. And so I stopped going after about 3 visits. And to be honest, I wanted to go back. I still want to go back, but I have not. And so I don't know if, I don't know.
Your higher self is waiting on you.
Say that again?
I said your higher self is waiting on you.
I hear that a lot. And I battle with myself mentally because I feel like it's a lot of things that happened to me in my childhood that hold me back. I think I grew up faster than I should have, and that played a role. And so now I'm trying to kind of like, am I where I'm supposed to be, or should I be more advanced than where I am now? Like, it's a constant battle. And even like, I recently just moved from my house back into my mom's house. And I found myself in the bed all day on Friday. Like, the first time I got out of the bed was 8 o'clock at night. From Friday night until 8 o'clock p.m. Saturday night was like my first time actually getting out of bed, just thinking about life itself. Like, it's just so much going on. And I'm not really sure how to handle it or who to talk to or even where to begin in my story to even figure out, like, where I need help, what areas I need to work on. It's just, I don't even know.
I ain't going to give a long sermon right now, but you know you got people. You know you got people, but as a friend, we got to be able to know how to help. You know what I mean? Like, and, you know, that's a lot of what, you know, we're all talking about sometimes. You know, what does that help and support look like? But,
and see, I'm glad y'all had this and you're inviting people to come up and share things like this, because I try to keep a lot to myself because I feel like I'm placing a burden on other people when I share my story, and I don't want to do that. I want to be the one people come to, you know, be able to talk to.
But we all do that. All of us, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, all of us spend all our time doing everything for everybody else but ourselves. Like, how sustainable of a model is that? You know, you saw how quickly we burned ourselves out just trying to do one thing. You know, so like, my thing is, like, I know that this is new for a lot of us. You know, this is new for me. You know, you had told me, you know, 5-6 years ago that I'd be sitting here advocating for, like, you know, therapy and other types of mental health. I'd say that you was crazy, you know, but at the end of the day, that's part of what the problem is. And like, I feel like if we're gonna all be in a point where we're gonna be able to be a good village for one another, we gotta have that hard conversation about what that village looks like, you know, what it feels like, you know, what people's needs are, you know, because it looks different. Like, we all internalize and project that stuff differently, you know, so it's about us, like, really just trying to find a way to get on the same page.
I think there's also power in recognizing that, like, your testimony is freeing for people. Hello, child.
Hey.
Just go to daddy. I'm like, oh, okay. Your testimony is freeing for people, right? And like, you being vulnerable and sharing yourself from an emotional space gives other people permission to do the same. Because it started with Aaron and I talking, and then Sis spoke, you know, and so on and so forth. It's a domino effect, you know. But if we all came into this space like, I'm going to withhold and keep myself to myself, then all we would have is a whole bunch of lonely people in a room full of people. You know, and so like, being able to expose yourself fully, or just a part of your truth that is not visible, I think gives other people permission to do the same thing. And then that really puts us in a position to actually create a village. Because I think a lot of times when we realize we don't have villages, because we don't have people around that we're actually allowing to really like access us. We're showing like what we want them to see, or like our representative. Which is why I always say, like, my real friends have to be able to check me, and they have to be able to like hear me talk about what's real and tell me what's real. I don't have friends that are like for surface level conversation. That's not really my jam. Like, if I wanted to do pleasantries, I could sit next to a stranger on the train. So I think it's really important for you to give yourself permission to tell your story, and to realize that there's value in you sharing your story, not just for you, but for other people too. I really do believe that. I don't think anything that we experience is supposed to be solely for our benefit. And when we keep it to ourselves, we rob other people of the benefit of, you know, like, our experience. Thank you for sharing, by the way.
No problem. I actually, before I spoke, I was shaking and sweaty, but now I feel kind of relieved. I kind of should.
After this one, we're gonna jump to our to a few more questions that we have, just to make sure that we keep the dialogue moving. So go ahead, bro.
All right, so I got to run after this. I'm trying my hardest not to sound like a speaker right now, so I want to just be honest. I'm actually afraid of being in a room full of black people. Yeah, I'm a self-hating black man, and I grew up pretty racist. My dad used to beat me. He used to hit me in the chest a lot as a kid. Used to choke me, used to threaten me. He told me that I wasn't worth being here, and I definitely internalized all those messages. Every black person that I can remember growing up was mean to me, and they were very hateful. I used to get called Carlton, like all the just white. I believe that was white growing up. And y'all can laugh, that's okay. It's not gonna like re-traumatize me. I know who I am. But that used to really mess with me, right? And so like, I came here today because I wanted to be in a room full of black people and do something that's scary, but also because the conversation about mental health is important, because people are dying. People are taking their lives. People are living lives of silent desperation. That's a quote, I didn't make that up. People are not living, like you said, they're not living their fullest selves, right? So like my person was my wife, Tynesha. That's the person I lived my fullest self for. No one believed I was gonna marry a black woman. She's a black woman. She grew up in Baltimore. I'm not from here. But like she challenges me every day to just be real, right? And so like if I'm being real right now, I guess the message that I want to say is that like there's a lot of freedom in sharing your story. I want to dovetail off that. I want to piggyback that. There's a lot of freedom in telling your story. Also know that like it gets better. Like if you just keep living and you just keep breathing, it gets better. Like I got out of an abusive household. I'm not getting beat up anymore at school. I'm not doubting myself anymore. I'm not questioning a lot of things. Like I'm feeling empowered today, and like I'm vulnerable right now, and my voice is shaking right now because I'm anxious as hell. But like I go to therapy. I have a really good life. I work out. I write. I do all kinds of great things. And like I think for me, the thing that hit me the most was when I was living in Oregon at the time. That's where a lot of white people are. Yes, that's Oregon. And
is it Oregon or Oregon?
Oregon.
No, okay.
Yeah. But the thing I heard, it was this song, and it said, "All we can do is keep breathing," and that helped me out. I've wanted to end my life a couple of times. I've held a lot of shame around sex. Grew up in a very strict Christian household. I've had a lot of things, and like.
I have been waiting for that conversation to come up. I'm
about
surprised someone
Christian,
hasn't said sooner, like Jesus is my therapist.
That was gonna be my next.
Well, y'all should talk about that after I leave. But yeah, just if you're a guy listening to this right now, that's really who I want to talk to. Or if you know a guy, like tell them to stop, like to just get over themselves, like just to say how they're actually feeling, because we as men, we hold our breath, and like a lot of us have been hit in our chest. And what I've learned is that we get hit in our chest and we just hold our breath forever. And I've held my breath for a long time, and I'm always afraid of getting hit in my chest again. I'm always afraid of getting beat up, and I'm always afraid of getting beat down, and afraid of doing the wrong thing. And I think a lot of guys feel that way. I'm not just counting the women or those who identify as women, but like a lot of guys feel that way. And so like if that is you, like find somebody to just share just a piece of yourself, with just 1% of yourself. Doesn't have to be the whole story. You ain't got to get up here and share everything and break down crying. Just share 1% of your story, because you have no idea of how like things can start to change after you do that. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, bro. Okay, well, since Randy's gone, I guess I'll throw the next question out there. Since he already started to kind of touch on it, where do we sit in the whole dialogue and conversation with how religion and spirituality and faith plays into therapy? It's my personal belief that, just as the good book says, faith without works is dead. So we can believe all we want that certain things are going to get better. We can have that faith, but without the actual work to follow it up, you're just kind of wishing and hoping on a prayer, and I think that oftentimes we've been too kind of quick to dismiss certain things, to just say, I'll pray about it and hope that it gets better, without doing the actual follow-up work that we need to do to actually make sure that we're good, both intellectually, spiritually, and physically. So I kind of wanted to tackle that. Did you hear it? Yeah. All right.
I want to piggyback. So my experience, I have grandmothers that kind of exist seemingly on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? So I have a grandmother that's really spiritual. Her root is Christianity, but she is very open to a lot of things that are more considered spiritual practices than religious practice. And then I have a grandma who is like Bible thumping, speaking negativity into your life based on what she knows of the Bible. Love her. If she sees this, sorry, it's the truth. And so my experience initially, and this kind of also ties into the things that we experience that don't promote our wellness, was like, you know, what happens in our house stays in our house. And Jesus will fix it. And I don't need to talk to somebody. Jesus is also my therapist. And I don't know, it's just a perspective of Christianity that's kind of like polarizing. And it kind of removes us from the ability to like recognize the resources that were created by Jesus and God, to access to actually like, you know, get to our wellness. So in the same way, like if you are physically sick, with the exception of certain religions, most people aren't denying themselves doctors, they're not denying themselves hospital, but because it's a mental illness, because it's something you can't see, there's this aversion or this idea that it's not something that is operating within the realm of God. And so I was grateful to have a grandmother who could, you know, like expose me to things that allowed me to realize that my God did not want me to deny myself therapy. My God did not want me to act like my mental wellness and mental space was entirely relying upon him, and like he didn't give me resources to like contribute to my wellness. Like I said, I was really waiting for that conversation to come up. I was surprised I hadn't heard it sooner. I had so many questions about that in our DMs that kind of hit it in the various ways, like, oh, being from the islands and having this experience. And a lot of people also ask me, like, how do you take the stigma away with your family? And what my grandmother actually taught me was like, it's not for them to get. Like, if they don't get it, again, like, I don't owe them my detriment. And so if they don't get it, sorry for them, but like, I'm gonna get my wellness. Like, I can't make them understand it. I could certainly try. Lord knows I would talk their head off if they're receptive. And like, you don't really want to spar with me when it comes to words. Like, let's do it. But if they don't get it, my decision to continue journeying towards my wellness is not contingent upon their understanding. And like, just being okay with that. Like, it's not for everybody, but who it's for, like, they're with me. The people that actually are like most impacted by me doing that journey and doing that work are the people that like that get it anyway, and they're not trying to deter me under the guise of God. So yeah, that was my experience. If anybody else has any experiences in relation to religion and mental health, I'd definitely be interested in hearing it.
Nobody want to touch that one, huh? All right. We got one.
Shorty with pink hair.
Hey. Hi guys. I don't know how I sound on the mic. So
Please speak into the mic and yeah, there you go.
So I'm a foster kid as well. So my mom went to jail when I was really young, but I had a foster mother who was really heavy into church. So I've been in the church since I was very, very small. It's kind of really helped me along my journey because like the one thing I was thinking, like hearing everybody talk was like, you talk, you free yourself. But I think because I was in foster care, one of the other ladies said we were stemmed in therapy from little, or a social worker to constantly like pick our brains to make sure we were there. But even when I talk to I could talk my story, like even to this day, like as I talk my story, I don't know if it's freeing, but I talk it because like I've learned that mentally it helps other people, so I say it, like I don't mind. But I don't know if it really completely freed me wholly because I have like random trigger points, like even to this day as a grown adult from like little kid. But the one thing I've held on to since I went to church so young is that I made it through everything, you know what I mean? So like, and I know it's only a higher power that probably moved me through these things, because nobody damn sure didn't drag me out, by my hand, or like my situation just would change, like gradually through the universe, God moving himself. So that was one thing that I've always held on. So even when I go through things, like I too been through foster care, sexual, physical, mental abuse, even down my older years as I got older. But the only thing I had to hold on to was God. Like there was times like I couldn't, like you said, like you talk to people, you feel like they can't get you, they don't understand, or you have friends, you have a village, but it's just sometimes like people just don't, you're not standing here. You might be standing in your own troubles, but you're not kind of standing here. So you can't really gather these emotions or all the emotions from that to this or together as a whole now from 8 to 27 or etc. So the only person that I actually have to honestly, like sometimes I always tell people like, you don't really know struggle until you got to comfort yourself. But it's not really me comforting me, it's God comforting me. Like, you know what I mean? And only, like, again, the only reason I know that because that's the only way I've rolled over and made it out through situations. So I don't know. I was going to get up here and actually speak on it, but I was like, I don't really know. You know, religion is a sensitive topic. Like, you know what I mean? It's a big deal to me, but so is mental health.
And I think that the fact that we're so afraid sometimes to have the two conversations together is why, you know, there's such a divide between one and the other. I think that we need to start acknowledging that, you know, they can go hand in hand. You know what I mean? You can prioritize self-care and still be strongly rooted in your faith. And I don't think that we've had enough conversations about the fact that they're not mutually exclusive, you know?
Just like resilience and vulnerability. You can't be resilient and be vulnerable to some people, but like they actually can coexist.
Well, that's really all I had to say. I mean, Jesus is my therapist. I did go to therapy, actually last year. That's kind of when I started really talking a lot more. Like I would share stuff when I was younger, but not like when I was older. Because something I always expressed, like I knew pain when I was younger, but I was a kid. So I always used it kind of like, like you said, we see pain our whole life. So I thought that's what I was told. But like as an adult, as I got conscious to things, I was like, wow, like this is the first time I'm really like getting these things where I feel and I'm aware of what's going on. So now, like I said, Jesus is my therapist, even when I see a therapist overall, just the metric. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you for sharing.
Hi, my name is Joy, and I use the She series. So I will say I've grown up in a Christian household, all of my family, and so I'm really familiar with like the tension between faith and seeking mental health issues just in general. And I think framing is really important because as people of color, specifically Black people, and I can only speak to Christianity, but I know religion in general has really been a huge medium for coping and survival. And so I think when we have this conversation, a way to really open up the lines of communication around this topic is to really acknowledge that and honor that, you know, because we have not had access for years to mental health, religion has been a huge way for us to kind of get through. And so in terms of like having those conversations, I found that it is really helpful to acknowledge that first. So I think a lot of times the conversations kind of get shut down with this when we're talking about people who are really religious is because we don't honor that first and say that that has been a huge mechanism for how we've gotten through.
Thank you.
I want you to know that I looked to the right and I did not see you, and I was about to be like, Aaron, where did she go? But I'm just glad you're here.
Oh man, I'm trying to for me, I feel really short with this.
Just pull the mic down.
I don't know how to do that. Thank you. See, y'all gotta pray.
You're right up.
Thank you. Like for me, I will admit, with me, and this is nothing against God. I still believe in God. Always will. He's, you know, but what has happened with me is that like the churches that I grew up in and was born in turned me away because of my issues, and there was, oh, you have demons. And the last church, what really hurt me was, and I'm not going to say names, but
Pastor Daniel.
We went to the same church though.
Yeah, so he would, but this is another the church I ended up going back into that I was born in. I don't know, and tell you about that one later. You know, went through some stuff at that church, and it was hurtful because the person who produces somebody that I know is the one that permanently set me down and saying you got demons and you this and you that. And so I was thinking the other day, I'm like, man, I used to do drama and whatever, and they turned me away, and so it hurt because that was the church I was born in. I was raised in, you know, same church, but I was born in another one, and it hurt, and I feel like You know, a lot, like I said, for me, it was, oh, you have demons. Oh, you want attention. Oh, you, and then, you know, they would look at my Facebook post instead of saying that I was reaching out for help. They would look at it and say, oh, well, they would sit me down. And then it was, well, since you weren't at the church for the 6 months that we sat you down, we didn't see you being punished. We're going to sit you down permanently. So now I've not had a church home for 4 years. And a lot of people come to me saying, oh, you ran away from God. No, I didn't. I had that, you feel me, from pulled from up under me, and it obviously hurts. But at my prayer, I pray to God that I can find a safe place to go. But that was my story. I was ostracized and big time. And it hurts. This one last thing. When you are listening to the same music that helps you to heal and get through your anxiety attacks and your depressive and suicidal thoughts or whatever, and the person playing on those instruments is the person that set you down, there's nobody that I've found that I can relate to that. That hurts. You know, but and them singing songs about peace and you're not alone, and you're like, but you the one that set me down, and my family was on your album, but you set me down saying, sign and date here, you can never be on any ministry ever again in your life, and your own family didn't even come and say, are you okay? So yeah.
And you know what I think the tricky thing about mental illness is, if you were on crutches, nobody would fault you for walking slow. You know what I mean? But with mental illness, there's a crutch in your brain, and because people can't see it, they don't have that mindfulness, or they don't interact with you with like that understanding. All they interact with is based on like what they can see physically, and it's like, you here, so you must be straight until you start talking crazy. And I think like the importance of like us demonstrating vulnerability is because it kind of pulls it out of other people. Like,
once I see that you're not good and all right and owning it, then it gives me the space to kind of say the same thing.
And also to like show up for you, you know, like it requires presence, you know, like you were standing here crumbling, Tiff stood up, then Aaron stood up, then my grandma stood up, you know, like a lot of times if people can't see it, they would like to, like the narrative that they tell themselves is it's not real, you know, and so like, I'm sure it was really easy for those people in the church, regardless of what they thought they believed, to dismiss you because they couldn't physically see whatever you were experiencing mentally.
Absolutely. Definitely. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I still believe in God, but yeah, I think it makes it the hardest when you're listening to music by those people and you like, are you kidding me? It's
triggering.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. But yeah, that's my.
Thank you.
How are y'all?
How you doing?
Thank you for having us. I'm actually down here from Philadelphia.
Come up.
I'm actually down here from Philadelphia.
Hey! That's when me and my husband met.
Good. And my name is Ayana. She just reminded me to introduce myself. So there's a couple of things. So I am a counselor. So I went to school for it. I've worked at nonprofit organizations throughout the Philadelphia area, went into higher ed and did counseling. And then a couple months ago started my own practice called Grit and Grace. And that was really intentional because for me, I think there is this kind of, if you can just think your way through it and just work hard enough, you can get through life. But the other part for me is this grace thing, and that to me is the faith lens. And so, you talked about the faith without works. It has to be both, in my opinion, and what I found to work for me. And so that has been a huge part of the way I look at the world and look at how I can better serve people. The other part is I really am not like an undercover theologian, right? Like I've been raised in the church. My dad is a reverend and my family and all of that stuff. But with that being said, there are a couple of key scriptures that I hold really close, or key stories. And one is when Jesus asked the man at the pool, do you want to... Sorry, when Jesus asked the man at the pool of Bethesda, do you want to be made whole? Right? And so a lot of times for me, it's really that simple. Do you want to be healthy? Do you want to be well? And if the answer is yes, I just need a yes, and we can go from there. The other part is there's a scripture that talks about, I came that you might have life and have it to the full. And so I ask myself, am I living my life to the fullest? And if the answer is no, I have a problem for myself because I don't believe I have a God who died for me to just live this kind of mediocre life. But in terms of even how I've seen mental health in church or in the faith lens, oftentimes, it's like, well, that's a really anointed singer, and that's a really gifted athlete, and that's a really anointed preacher, and that's a really gifted whatever. And I'm like, well, there are also really gifted clinicians. and counselors, and they are just as gifted as all of these other people that you appreciate. And they also have something to really
that are
offer.
struggling with those. So I definitely advise anybody that's able to take advantage of that.
Hey
The
guys.
safe place.
My name is Nia. Technically I'm from Baltimore, I guess, more or less. I've been here long enough to say that. And for me, one of the things that I've come to find out and try to communicate with people is just the connection that there really is with the mental and the spiritual. There's a lot of things that we can't see and a lot of battles that can't be expressed with just by talking it out. It really is something that has to go deeper. And I think that's why, this type of conversation is so important, and combining it with faith, because there's so many different roots. And what the young lady before me was talking about, and just the ministry of Christ and things like that, when you see demon possession, when you see spiritual activity, a lot of that was connected to someone's mental illness, to someone's mental disposition at that particular time. And when you think about what happens through generation with the battles that they face and how it gets passed on from person to person to person, it takes some extra girth, it takes some extra weapons, it takes some extra soldier type of mentality to really break forth those chains. If any of you are familiar with Tasha Cobbs, there's a song that there's a power in the name of Jesus to break every chains, and there's a lot of us who are still shackled. But we don't have the right tools, or we're not really privy to the tools that help us to really get rid of things like from suicidal thoughts to depression to just the roundabout of these negative feelings that when you really begin to think about it, it's not in our control. We can't do it in our own self. We can't do it in our own strength. There really are some things that is truly a spiritual breakthrough that we must have in order to come through, something like molestation, something like rape, something like a failed suicide attempt, something like our father leaving us, something like us seeing our brother shot, or someone being locked up. It takes so much more than therapy to really bring that whole person together. And for me, it comes first with knowing who God is. Some of us have a very interesting a depiction of who God is. We think oftentimes as a father, that's tends to be the metaphor that people use. But when you have a father who walked out on you, when you have a father who was abusive, when you have a father who criticized you and never praised you, when you have a father who wasn't a provider, when you have a father who, wasn't loving at all or wasn't affectionate, then that's tends to be the same type of view you have of God. But until you really begin to see God for who he is, as it was said before, he was a creator, he is a creator, and he created you with a purpose, which is why for me evolution is such a scary thing, because it leaves so many questions left unanswered. But when you have the opportunity to see, okay, someone did take the time to think of me enough to put me together in my mama's womb, and so the only way to know the best way to function as the creation is to get to know the creator, and I know for me that's just how I keep myself together, because I know how there's multiple times when I really just want to say, forget all y'all, I'm done, I can't deal with y'all no more. But for me, and this, also heard people talking about singing and things like that. Singing for me is my therapy. And I'm a big writer, and I have like videos and things like that, and just reading scripture. And one of the things that I found, people talk about church hurt a lot, and I'm not dismissing that, because it's so detrimental that a place that's supposed to be representative of a loving God brings so much hurt to so many people. But for me, I choose to have to look beyond that and really see, okay, if we're supposed to be little Christ, that's what Christians are. Who is Christ? And that's the first example that we should follow, because if we have this misrepresentation of who Christ is, if we don't take the time to build that relationship, if we don't have time to read his word that he said he gave to us, if we don't take time to really pray to him, to talk to him, and not be afraid to question him, it's okay to question God. And I think we have this a lot of us have this mentality that with God, we can't talk to him, we can't, have a true dialogue with him. But when you read the Psalms, when you read people like the major and the minor prophets, and just they have some real discussion with God, like, look, like, what are you doing? Like, all this stuff makes no sense, and I need you to really talk to me. I need you to really love me. And he was there to respond. And the love of God is so very overwhelming, and it's so rich, and it's so pure. If any of you have ever gone to a 7 Last Words sermon for like Easter or something like that, one of the ones a sermon that always struck me is how the 7 last word where it said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When Jesus was on the cross, and that's what he said before he gave up his life. And
I remember Pastor, he said, really considering that verse when you think of the hands of God, you know, that they were strong enough to carry the Spirit of Christ, but at the same time, you know, they're delicate enough, you know, not to break it, not to drop it, not to, you know, have these weird impressions on it. And so just if he can hold the Spirit of, you know, God, if he's able to hold the Spirit of Jesus as he gave up his life on the cross, what can he do for you?